Patrick Schubert began his career in emergency communications in the small Texas town of Smithville in 2004. For over 20 years, Patrick has served his communities as he moved around to several agencies, landing in Calhoun County Sheriff's Office in 2014. In June of 2024, Patrick was appointed as the Director of Emergency Communications for Calhoun County, a county along the Gulf Coast. Not only has Calhoun recently consolidated Port Lavaca Department with Calhoun County Sheriff's Office into one center, which went live in November 2024, but it also frequently deals with inclement weather, such as Gulf hurricanes. Patrick was also awarded the Telecommunicator of the Year award in 2022 and an Heroic Excellence Award for Lifesaving. This is Lifeline. Well, Patrick, thank you so much for
Hi.
joining us today. We appreciate it, sir.
Yeah, it's definitely an honor, and it's been crazy seeing all just all this resulting from going to a good solid training class.
Very true, because I met you first at the CMCP course in February. I think was at the tail end of February.
Is when it was cold, I remember that.
True. And then Gary had the opportunity to sit in a class with you was it last week or a month? How long has it been?
2 weeks.
That was the 28th, I believe.
Mm-hmm. The
Yeah,
disaster
that
planning.
was disaster planning for the PSAP. That was a pretty awesome class. It was definitely one of those. And then right after that, we had the hurricane conference for our local area in Victoria. So that was like a double dose of, we're all gonna die.
That's awesome. Hold on. There's a conference for hurricanes?
Yeah, the what is it? The Mid Coast Atlantic Hurricane Conference. Anyway, it was in Victoria, but they had a lot of folks there, and I mean it's mainly you saw a lot of more of like emergency managers and that sort of thing, but uh, you really don't see a lot of the combined dispatch in this area too. So that may be also why it wasn't represented.
So for a hurricane conference, and I guess because you're the director now, my God, my brain is all over the place. So now that you said that there's a conference, if I can ask, what being the director now and not a dispatcher, which you I guess were before, what did you take away from that? What was like one or two points that just stood out to you? Because I'm so thoroughly curious. We don't have any conferences for bad weather. We need flood conference here.
Right. Well, I mean, it's one of those things where you're in a spot to where you can see an overview of exactly the larger effects and the larger kind of what you're going to need to survive. It's uh, that noticing of the shift of responsibility towards planning instead of being a good troop in the trenches, so to speak. And
Right.
It's one of those. It's just one. It's a crazy outlook knowing that you have to plan for stuff that may or may not happen, and you have to be the one that is responsible for it versus you're the department head, and it's a crazy feeling.
I bet. Wow. And so how long was the conference? Just a couple of days or a day, a week?
It was 2 days, yeah, April 2nd and 3rd.
So you have hurricanes there. I can't even imagine what it would be to begin to prepare. I just think of raincoats and rain boots and maybe I'm not even being funny. I know nothing about it. So what is that
Well,
even? How?
there's a comedian named Ron White, and he says it's not that the wind is blowing, it's what the wind is blowing. And that's
I
very
love
much the
Ron
case.
White. I
And
love that man.
it's funny that you bring that up because, like I said, I started June 10th, 2024, and I think we had Hurricane Beryl was the second, maybe the first week of July. So luckily we didn't take a direct hit, but that was a solid education into. And I guess one thing that I haven't mentioned is like being that I was in the Calhoun County Emergency Communications Division, but I was overseeing the sheriff's office dispatch at the same time. So it wasn't like, hey, there's just this single man department to worry about. This is a true exercise in how are you going to run your dispatchers? How are you going to run your shifts? How are you going to be prepared? Make sure everybody reports on time. Um, so, and luckily it was a glancing blow. So, those mistakes that were made can be corrected and move on. And it's a learning experience. And it's not like Hurricane Harvey in 2017.
Thank goodness.
No kidding. So that made me, as you were talking about the learning opportunities and what you learned from it and being in the trenches in the moment, I think after action review would come in pretty handy after those types of things, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And that's one thing that I really am kind of working to institute is uh, dispatch has always been sort of a forethought. And so we're trying to make sure that uh, they're thought of in the planning phases of these things, so that way, whenever they are debriefed, that debriefing and that information that they get after those after action reports are valuable and will help out going forward.
Nice.
So,
Nice.
you you're from a much smaller agency than Erica and I are from. Um, how many dispatchers or how many communications officers did you say you had?
We have Currently we have 12 full time, one part time,
Hmm.
and then myself. But I'm definitely not in the seat as much as you are.
Sure, sure. I mean, that must just be because they were from two separate entities and they kind of got crammed together, right?
Right, right. But and it's you go from on one hand having to transfer a call to a different agency, or having, like, with Port Lavaca, they were the secondary PSAP, so they didn't necessarily have to jump to 911 because the primary would answer it, then the secondary would
Mhm.
answer it, and so they knew that county had it up until you transferred the call to them. So now
Interesting.
it's all answered in one center. So
And you kind of were responsible for heading that up, and November 2024 was not really that long ago. We're talking
No
less than
kidding.
6 months.
Yeah.
oh yeah, and there was a lot to go into that, and there's been a lot learned, since starting it out. Because I mean, just in uh, whenever I say I saw it built from the ground up, the first time that I ever walked into it, the walls and were put up, but the roof wasn't on. So
Oh,
it's definitely. Uh, I know I because it was crazy the amount of, like, well, what kind of chairs do we want? I don't, so then you got to figure out how to, what kind of chairs, what kind of this, arguments for that. And, everybody and their grandma has an opinion on how you should be doing stuff. So,
Who
uh,
would argue over chairs? Can't
right,
even
right. Yeah. Headsets, chairs, positions,
keyboards. Yeah, all of it. Building temperature, I'm sure, is a constant question.
Oh
Can you
yeah,
tell that
or
we're speaking from experience here, Patrick? Because the chairs, we just went through the chair thing.
Yeah.
what did y'all end up see? And like we got secret lab chairs. I don't know if I can drop the name on here or what, but I
Oh, that's
mean
fine.
they're like they're the bee's knees, and so I couldn't. Everybody was handing me these like old kind of like uh pamphlets or whatever, and they have look like stuff you'd see on like one of those old prison shows or something like that. And I'm like, I don't want it to look like the 1980s in a new dispatch center, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And so we have, well, think of it this way, we have just on our side, just PD in our combined center, which it's not combined. What was the other term that they called it?
Consolidated?
It's I guess
That's
consolidated. I guess we would be combined, but there was another name that is sticking in my head where there's not just police agencies, but there's others. Like for us, we have police, fire, EMS, TxDOT is there. The local transportation authority is also there. And there was another term for it that is just blowing my mind. When I'm thinking, I'm stuck on the chairs, okay? So just our agency alone, just PD is about 200 people. Then you add county. Then you add the Texas Department of Transportation and their 15 or 20 or however many it is. And then there's EMS and then there's fire. That's a lot of chairs. I don't even want to think about how many chairs and where these chairs with the demos and the surveys and the arguments over this chair versus that chair. And I like this one, and taking chairs from one side of the room because they like that chair better than the other side of the room.
Mhm.
I can't even imagine. For you, it couldn't have been that bad.
well, you would think like the only thing I'll say is that if you always consider a constant value of 100%, and whether or not you still have to listen to the opinions of all of them. So it just all depends on how much influence those voices carry. But
Well said.
I can guarantee you that they all had their input on the chair.
Meanwhile, you're like, I'm trying to get a friggin' roof on this place, people.
Right. Yeah. No. And I mean, it was tough. Don't even get me started on filing cabinets.
So, like,
What?
so how did like kind of all that come about? Because like I know you were appointed in 2024 to kind of to do this, or 2022, excuse me, to kind of do this. Um, but like, how did they come up to you and they were just like, Patrick, we want you to combine these centers, or like, how did that kind of all start? Because that was a whole lot
Yeah,
of
that makes sense.
a whole lot of questions I would imagine came around.
Well, they started out with the idea of combined dispatch for us, and in about 2022 with Calhoun County Commissioner's Court, they used ARPA funds to go through and build the center, and they they just kind of saw the need for combined dispatch and said, they started that in 2022. They didn't hire me until 2024. But they decided, they were going to pursue this. And I mean, through the legal paperwork, through all the stuff that takes that amount of time, we finally were able to get it done by the end of 2024.
Wow.
So
I,
what?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Gary. Sorry. I'm just musing aloud. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So what is like if you could go back in time, a year and a half and talk to your younger self before you started, or when you started this consolidation, or for anybody out there that may be watching and is perhaps consolidating their own centers together, what are some things that you wish you had known then that you know now that you had to learn you had to learn with blood, sweat, and tears? So maybe if somebody's listening, they don't have to, pay that same price. They can just enjoy your wisdom.
And they have not yet gone to the CMCP class.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And I was going to say earlier that because we couldn't remember that term, Paul would be very disappointed in us.
I know.
But,
Oh,
who cares? He's probably out drinking water. But so I would say the best advice or the best thing that I would tell myself is, you know, trust your gut, because at the end of the day, you have so much. You have been chosen to, define how this center is going to be created and how it needs to be run, and you know you have confidence put in you. You need to trust that that confidence is well placed and lead a center in a direction so that that way it doesn't get confused by all the outside influences coming in, because everybody has their opinion on how you run your center. You know, everybody wants to Monday morning quarterback, but
Yeah.
nobody really ever wants to play in the game.
so true. Well said. Not truer words have ever been spoken. I've used the Monday morning quarterback uh, many, many times. So, and I know eh, we're just having a conversation, right? So, just picking your brain about all kinds of things. What leadership style would you say you have, and how did you employ that? How did you employ that with bringing all of these personalities together from these different agencies to come, to create one? What would you say your style is, and how best has it served you?
I would say it's really leadership style depends on who you're leading, and that can change dramatically based off of a shift, off of a certain channel, off of a million different things. Um, I guess it would be really hard for me to define myself as a leader of anything other than just trying to be a servant leader, one that is really trying to make a better place to work for the people, excuse me, that work there, and trying to, realize that this is already hard enough. Let's, let's just come to the table, do our job, go home, live our life, and try not to rip each other apart going between here and there.
Well said. Well said. I am stuck trying to remember that term. I'm going to get it. I am going, that term is going to come back to my brain. I may even text someone while we're here. Carry the conversation for a second, Gary,
Sure,
while I
sure.
text somebody, because
So,
that's going to drive me nuts.
so as we kind of said, Calhoun County is a relatively lightly populated county. There's not millions of people living there. But like when you guys have a major event like a hurricane, like kind of blow through or high winds or any of those kind of events, because unfortunately, being on the Gulf Coast, you're more likely to have a hurricane than Erica and I would in like Central Texas, which is nice.
Yeah.
So like, how do you? I mean, like get prepared for that, because as you said, you as the leader, everybody's going to look to you for how to behave, how to act, how to respond, and especially when there's uh, like these times of chaos where uh, not how hard the wind's blowing in, but what's blowing in. The
I
water's kind
love
of like
that.
uh, rising. How do you kind of manage that chaos?
A lot of it has to do with just embracing the suck. Just
Yep.
is that it's gonna it's not gonna be pretty. But you know what? I mean, at the end of the day, like, we're in South Texas, like, I can guarantee you somebody's gonna show up with a barbecue pit, and eventually everybody's gonna be outside. Like, and that's happened in both instances of hurricanes that I've worked down here. Somebody shows up with a barbecue pit, and everybody ends up having like a good time sitting there just BSing around it. So you have to just you have to know that there's gonna be there's going to be rough times, and a lot of times, it's less the psyching up and more honestly of just the long points of boredom, because it seems like, oh, there's a hurricane, and it seems like that would just drive you for a long time, but eventually it's just like, oh yeah, there's a hurricane outside and I'm stuck in this building, you know.
Yeah.
And that just seems like such a what is it, trying to think of the phrase to use, but it's a very odd place to be, just where it's like, woo, shut up.
So, question. All right. So I'm trying to think, like, and tell me if I'm off here, Gary. So when we have like ice stuff coming our direction, right? When we have inclement weather here, we start prepping a couple of days before. We start thinking about,
We do
oh,
now.
don't do that. We do. Well, Snowmageddon doesn't count
Yeah.
because Snowmageddon was just wrong on so many levels for everyone. Places in Texas saw snow that have never ever seen snow. So
Right.
Snowmageddon is just its own animal. But I know how we start a couple of days ahead. We start thinking about rooms for people to stay in. We start sending out messages and emails saying, what about your go bags, things like that. Does that sound familiar to you, Patrick? And I'm sure it's I imagine it would be on a larger scale, because a hurricane has the potential to, when I say shut down everything, I mean everything, at least in my head. Am I
Sure.
overthinking it?
No, and one unique thing about us is that, even after a hurricane goes up the coast, so to speak, all it's doing is saturating all the rivers that run right back into us. So it's like, first you see this ridiculous wind and storm damage, and then you get this crazy flooding and stuff. So, but no, I mean, and granted, that's one thing with a small center that kind of makes it easy, or not easy, but it's, instead of organizing a group text of supervisors, which you could definitely have, you can just make sure, like, all you have to do is remember 13 names. We get regular briefings from the National Weather Service,
Mhm.
and they, normally will jump on a call with them. I know with Hurricane Beryl, it's kind of, it's not easy predicting a hurricane, at least not lately. It doesn't seem like. And with Beryl, it was like, it went from, this is going into Mexico, to within about 3 days of like, hey, here, you're going to get hit by a hurricane. And then it barely missed us. And I mean, we were getting daily briefings. We were trying just to make sure that, all of our communication staff was in place. We
Mhm.
do have some warnings, but there's sometimes with, I know in 2024, we had a bunch of straight line winds that just, just would come up out of the blue, and all of a sudden it would be blowing insane out of the north, just on a whim for an hour, and then you just got to go clean it up.
So when you say making sure that all your staff is in place, you're getting these briefings, you're getting these calls, you're getting this information from the National Weather Service. Are there emails that go out that say, okay, if this happens, you're coming in, or do they know that they're staying? Is mandatory, you're not going to leave because your person can't come in and relieve you? Is that understood?
Right. And luckily, that's one thing that we built into being able to have a new comm center, is we have bunk rooms set up for our dispatchers, and we have double bunk beds. So they're set up to where I can sleep 8 and work 4 at a time.
Nice. We have cots.
Yeah, a couple of them.
With Hurricane Beryl, we weren't in the building, and we had cots, and I had one on Hurricane Harvey, and they suck. And yeah, they definitely suck.
Well, The
We have
deep
in
floor.
my go bag. I have a nice luxury air mattress that has a built-in pillow. I have my blankie. I have all of the luxuries because after Snowmageddon, I will never ever be caught without my luxuries again.
Oh, I hear
Just
you.
never.
I slept on the floor.
Oh,
Yeah,
poor
I
Gary.
and it's kind of I don't know. We also, I mean, if honestly, if even if push comes to shove, we're we're sort of purpose built, and with we have like bathrooms with a shower in it. We have
Hmm.
uh, bunk rooms that have four beds apiece in it. We have a. It was going to be a kitchen, but then it just turned into a big headache to get a stove in there. So we just put a bunch of appliances in it. But it's like a break room, and they have there's plenty of outside space from dispatch for them to exist, so they're not constantly you know in that go mode, so to speak, because you're if you're on the center whenever that you're trying to sleep, that doesn't work very well.
Yeah, yeah. So you have they understand that they can sleep there. Um, that we didn't. Of course, they'll have go bags as any agency probably urges its people to have. What about when you can't go to the store, or I don't know, you have a break room, but what happens? And the reason I ask it because for Snowmageddon for us, there was a time we pretty much ran out of food. So, and there was because it was so bad outside, there was no way to get any because everything was closed. Everything we had in house, we'd eaten. There was no way to bring us anything. Do you guys have anything set up for that?
A lot of times those resources will come in before, hand before the emergency, especially like with a hurricane or anything like that. But we do try to be prepared with the way that we store food, the way that we're looking into long term meal storage, things like that. But as you can imagine, if dispatchers are picky about their chairs, they're sure picky about what they eat. So you got to kind of manage a thin line between how a lot. Luckily, we don't have hundreds of employees to think about. We have our people, which, would be 13, 14, including me. And, luckily, the community comes together in those times too, and a lot of times will help provide food. And we saw that a lot during Hurricane Harvey, and thankfully didn't have to depend on that during Hurricane Beryl.
So I'm curious now, and Gary, you already know. Get throw me a hand signal or something. So when you say depend on the community, the help comes to you, what does that look like? I mean, people just what, show up with a casserole dish? What?
Well, for instance, during Hurricane Harvey, we had several church groups that would come in and did full meals, of good old fashioned stick to your rib cooking. That whenever you've been eating MREs and jail food, it definitely is brings a lot
Yeah.
of kind of there because there's nothing like I don't know that veg all or whatever it is that they serve out of the jail. Just don't do it for me.
No.
So, like in reference to the hurricanes, you guys get these kind of major natural disasters more frequently than we do in Austin. Because the last major one we really had was probably Snowmageddon. And for me, and I think for a lot of people, that really felt good to do as a telecommunicator trying to help your community. There's a big event, it's got a clear start, it's got a clear ending, not too far apart from each other. You're going to have to get there, hunker down and work, but you're going to get
Mhm.
through it and help a lot of people, and it gives you kind of a really good sense of fulfillment, I think. Do you find that you and your folks get that as well with the hurricanes, since they are I guess more frequent and more frequent major events than kind of I'm used to in my working environment?
I mean, we definitely get a lot of public support whenever those things happen, and it definitely shows itself. But there's a huge basis of just love for the first responders in our area, and we kind of find our spot in there, and I noticed that it really does seem like you get a clear satisfaction out of being able to say, hey, I don't know, being able to come up with those war stories to tell,
Yeah.
kind of, yeah, I remember because I stayed 9 days during Hurricane Harvey, and I guarantee you, every dispatcher that got hired on after that heard about every single one of those 9 days too. So,
Yeah.
it is what it is.
9 days. Wow.
That's a long stretch. That's a long stretch.
No kidding. I'm never gonna complain about swim again.
Oh yeah, no, it was crazy too because and if you ever get the opportunity to visit Calhoun County, you'll see it's the front of the courthouse is all glass. So that's where we were hunkered down at. So it's like you get to look at this 2-story tall glass face with a huge north wind blowing in with the hurricane and stuff. It's just a extremely humbling experience.
I
Yeah.
do not doubt that, sir.
Wow.
One thing I wanted to kind of ask you was when you were in 2022 when you got your award for your life-saving medal. If I'm not mistaken, that was due to CPR instructions you gave. Is that correct?
Yes, a lady had called 911, and it was on a morning shift, and she said that her father had just essentially crashed out and wasn't breathing, and no signs of life, anything like that. So, as we all know, no go. And so I started telling her how to do CPR, and I mean, when you want to talk about somebody who just was on it, uh, I'm so happy I was able to give her those instructions. But she's the one that I mean, she was there. She did everything that I asked. She performed it to a T. We did chest
Nice.
compressions. We did. I can't remember exactly how many sets, but then I remember he like all of a sudden you just hear in the back, hey, baby, what are you doing? And you literally heard him come back to life over 911.
Wow.
And I mean, he without those chest compressions would have never actually have without wouldn't have made it basically. And
Right.
apparently his defibrillator wasn't shocking him right, wasn't doing something right, and because of those actions, he was able to be saved.
Well, that is
That's
an
amazing.
yeah, that is an incredible story. And I think it's also interesting too because a few years ago, the Texas legislature passed a, a law basically that all telecommunicators in the state had to be CPR certified. And we've recently
Mhm.
been kind of going through that training ourselves. So it's nice to see that um, you know can have such an impact. I mean, like as you said, you heard somebody come back to life, and you know through both his that gentleman's daughter and your hard work, he got to see some more sunrises, which is a beautiful thing.
Oh, for sure. And I'll brag on our EMS in for Calhoun County. They actually instituted CPR a year before it was mandated. So they,
Nice.
were, we they I'm very happy they did. because it was being trained in it helped a lot.
So question, when you were giving her the CPR instructions, was that before the law? Maybe I missed, maybe you said it and I just missed it. Was that before it was required? Were you using EMD, or was it just from memory, having knowing CPR? How did that come to be?
Well, to be honest with you, I would have to probably Google the date that it was mandated on. I can't remember the exact year, but I know it was 2022 is whenever this happened. So I'm thinking it was pretty close to the borderline, but either way, we had been training in it for at least 6 months before I ever, had any call that required it,
Wow.
or at least any call that it. I don't want to say because we've had CPR calls before, but it was.
Hmm.
It seemed like after we learned it, we did kind of have a spot to where I don't know. I mean, not every call with someone not breathing requires CPR, I guess,
True.
so it's just one of those things where I know I really, really think that just training for those types of things is really what leads to saves. And I think that's what I would encourage most dispatchers to do if I can get anything out of this would be just to know your procedures, know your callers, listen to them, and just, I mean, this came out of the clear blue sky. Just, just one morning, I think it was a Saturday or maybe Sunday morning, and it was just, I don't know. I'm pretty sure I was listening to a podcast.
Yeah, well, and it's always that, and I don't know if you've ever heard it, but we used to say, we're just kind of kicking back, just chilling, day shift, Sunday morning, just relaxing, and all of a sudden the call drops in your ear, and it's that call, the call you never think or at least you least expect, which in our line of work you should always expect it, but that's easier said than done, you know. So it for one, congratulations. That's amazing. I've done a few CPR calls in my time, but I don't recall ever hearing someone come back. Not like that. Usually the calls, you're doing your CPR, you're going through your EMD protocols, and the other first responders come on scene, they take over, and just like most calls, you hang up and you don't you might get some closure if EMS is able to tell you something, or if you remember, because you're just going on to the next thing. Did
Right.
you ever hear from them again, or did just kind of
No,
heard that he was okay and then you hung up and went on?
well, I mean, I he did come by the sheriff's office to speak with me, but I wasn't there, and I think
Ah,
I was on nights and asleep. So, but either way, they did have somebody there to speak with them. But and it was strange because him coming back like that, I was like, oh great, I just had this lady break this guy's ribs for nothing, and it turns out, like I said, that his defibrillator wasn't working right. So it was like it's
yeah.
just, I don't know, it's weird because it's like pick a day as an indicator where you can say that no matter all the mistakes that I've made or all the bad calls that I've had, I made a difference here. That's where you can clearly define it. And for me, it's, makes it worth it because I mean, at that point, I was 20 or well, at least about 18 years in.
Amazing. Wow. Were you gonna say something, Gary?
I was just going to say, it preparing for things, even though 99% of them may not happen, and they might be a quote unquote waste of time to spend your time preparing for them.
Hmm.
That 1% that does happen, and you make a difference in somebody's life, like keeping that guy got to spend extra time with his daughter and grandkids that he had and friends and family, um,
Family, yeah.
all because you were prepared to do that. And so, Especially in our profession, that is the name of the game, is to prepare for emergencies.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and it's one of it brings out, I think, a lot of the best in people with small agencies in that aspect, that all these people have buy-in to these community affecting events, and they will, I feel like, help you prepare better for it. So having that small center mentality of being able to know who you're standing face to face with and who you're helping and who you're sending out into harm's way is something that really is a game changer as far as how you approach preparing the center for that type of situation.
I'm going to say it because I think this is the second time I've had the opportunity to say it on the podcast, but it just seems to come up here more often. Gordon Graham, from Lexapol, he has this thing that he always says, and it's so relevant here. It's, what is it? High risk, low frequency, non-discretionary time to act. And that sounds like that, because it's that little bit of training that you do regularly, or it's the continual going over your SOPs, running scenarios in your head, or writing it down, or just rereading your protocols, or launching them if you don't have to, or in this case, if it's EMD, you get the big flip card book that you can kill an elephant with, and just flip through them regularly, so that when it's Saturday morning, Sunday morning, 6 or 7 o'clock, before anybody's up and moving around and the call drops in your ear and it's that call, you've made those small deposits of training, so that when it's time to make a massive withdrawal, like he says, there it is. And it just, as you were telling this story, in my head, all I could see was Gordon Graham standing there talking about the high risk, low frequency, non-discretionary. That's the story. That's the reason you do it.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's, those types of events that people carry with them the rest of their lives, for better or for worse, and they're going to remember
Mhm.
your part you played in it. So I'd like to be a good actor.
Well, I think
No kidding.
I think you certainly have been to many, many people over your career, and whether you get an award for everyone you help out or not, and they know how much you've helped them. So we are very appreciative of you, and it sounds like you really earned uh, that award in 2022 for Telecommunicator of the Year. So good job on that, sir.
Well, I
Absolutely.
appreciate it. And I mean, I know we've all, I know, like I said, this will be my 21st year. I'm not sure. Can we total our years here real quick?
Oh yeah, uh,
Oh, let's see. You're 21. Gary, what are you, 16 by
16.
now? 16?
Yeah,
And
16.
I'm,
So
if you don't
37.
count relocation time, probably more like 23-ish.
Yeah,
If you don't count moving from one state to the next and back again, 23 or so. Yeah.
about 60 years.
So 60 years. We are a retiree uh, amount of experience in this industry, and I mean, I would say, that there's a ton of other people out there like me that would love to tell their story and that live out in these small PSAPs and make differences in their communities, and every day just sit there, playing Candy Crush, waiting for the call, and getting, being being who's there to uh, have the opportunity to send the right person to the right scene to make seconds save
Yeah.
lives. And
Absolutely.
regardless, there's people like you guys that allow us to go to Capcog and uh, interact with us and let us see the interiors of what's the big city lights in action to us. So we definitely want to invite you guys down to the center too, and want you to come see what
Absolutely.
a small town see what we do.
But here's my thing, and I've been to, because I have an opportunity to go around and do some consulting. I've been to a handful of smaller agencies, and one thing that I can honestly say, I come away with convinced that they are no more, no less the first responder, regardless of whether or not they have the official title in their city or state, than any big city. What you do there is no different than what we do here. It just might be on a larger scale. But there's no placing extra value. And actually, now actually that you say that, you have a standing invitation to come back. And I need to get some of the people that have been in your center that have had these monumental calls like this, because they're making a difference. And when might there ever be another opportunity for them to go out on the airwaves and tell their story so that someone else can benefit and help celebrate them? So I just think that's amazing.
Definitely, and it's crazy that there's certain times. I've spent I think probably 8 out of my 11 years being the only male dispatcher. So I've gotten like the 911, where's your emergency, and they'll be like, Patrick, is that you? I'm like, oh great, you know. It's like sometimes I don't know, and it's weird because it's there's other little stories, like literally, like I remember I left for work and like an hour later was taking a call, my neighbor's wife passing out, so it was
Ooh.
just it's just crazy, how much. So like whenever I say being involved in the community and really
Yeah.
being interested in its welfare, it's crazy the way that it can come about
Yes.
like that.
Yes. And we absolutely would love to have you back to tell us some more of those stories, because you
Yeah.
know those are, I think, our favorite things. And if any of you out there in the wide internet world want to tell your story, please feel free to shoot us an email. You all know the email address, lifeline911podcast@gmail.com. So,
Or
uh,
drop it in the comments.
or drop it in the comments. I always forget that. Thank you, Erica. Uh, and and
Yeah.
and Patrick, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. I was really excited to kind of get to pick your mind about, a small agency along the coast. That sounds like trouble in the making between May and October, or whatever the hurricane season is.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And thank you all for joining us. And as I said earlier, if you'd like to send us a question or a comment, you can email us at lifeline911podcast@gmail.com, or drop a comment if you'd like. From all of us at Lifeline 911, I'm Gary,
I'm Erica.
and we will see you next week.
Thank you for watching our production of Lifeline 911. If you have any questions about today's topic or topics you'd like us to cover in the future, please reach out to us at lifeline911podcast@gmail.com. This has been a production of Lifeline 911 Podcast, copyright 2025. From all of us at Lifeline, stay safe out there. And until next time, this is Lifeline 911 signing off.